What's going on, guys? Bart here with Tully Television. I truly want to thank all of you for stopping by. Hopefully today is the day we earn that subscription. We're going to be getting into a comic book review here today. A series that came out some time ago, but I felt recently like the urge to uh, go back and reread this series and try to attempt to run through this book. It's about 125 issues. We covered the special edition in which this Excalibur team formed for the first time, had their first mission together, so to speak, and then they formed, and now this book will be their continuation of their ongoing adventures. Of course, we have Rachel Summers, the daughter of Scott and Rachel from the far-flung future, Kitty Pryde, trying to, at this stage in her life, prove she's just not a teen sidekick. Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler, trying to find his place in this world. Captain Britain and his fiancee Megan, also trying to figure out where they fit in the world together, and basically Captain Britain trying to carry the mantle of hero and other effects that has on him. And this team didn't gel really at first. Yes, over time they gained to respect each other and deal with each other's personalities, so to speak. But it was rough, and I like how Chris Claremont would give inner dialogue during conversations between characters where they were letting something go but still kind of angry about it, but letting it go for the overall betterment and cohesion of the team. And yeah, so let's get into this. And I noticed also initially, and I kind of forgot about it, this book was a little more higher priced because it was printed in prestige mode, so to speak, which is basically that it's a better paper quality. So that's why this series was a little bit more expensive at the time. Um, but here's the cover. I always liked. This has always been one of my favorite covers of comic books. Again, Megan, Captain Britain, Rachel, Kitty Pryde, our boy Kurt right here, and the war wolves looking to cause problems. Of course, this book is written by Chris Claremont, Alan Davis, and Paul Neary, or the penciler and inker respectively. They also did the cover. Again, this wasn't a time where there was 10 covers to every comic book. Variant covers have gotten a little out of control, in my opinion. But we initially start off, and the starting title of this issue is Werewolves of London. Oh! Werewolves in somewhere in England, because I don't want to get copyrighted. So werewolves in London, and we start off at this place called Gateway Technologies, which will this won't be the last time you see this particular abandoned factory, so to speak. But we see a Tweedledum here is his name, and he's messing around with some doodads here, right? We see there's a wanted poster for the Crazy Gang, in which he seems to be a part of this crazy gang. That seems to look like, if his name is Tweedledum, figure Alice in Wonderland type of motif for that, for the Crazy Gang, okay? And then we get the introduction of this character here. He seems to be non-sentient up until he was tossed, His name is going to be Widget. It's going to end up being Widget, and we'll see if he was always sentient or did he just now become sentient from more interacting with Tweedledum here. Is it Tweedledope? Tweedledope. Tweedledope. So did Tweedledope give him some sort of energy to become sentient, or was he always sentient and just was playing possum to not be bothered? Here we get kind of like where Excalibur is going to be proceeding with their first mission. Of course, we have a cop here, not too sure. He's not too sure what these two teenage girls can do. Remember, this was at a point in time in Marvel history where people were very reluctant to trust mutants, even more so than they may appear now in Marvel history. So he's very reluctant, especially with them being teenage girls, right? Which I get. You don't want a teenager going into what I'm about to explain here, but Excalibur seems to have a police liaison in which he's aware that they're trying to work as a team to fight crime in England. And so he's going to be the buffer for now between the Excalibur team and the rest of England. And he's going to try to call Excalibur in for dangerous situations that more superpowered people can maybe handle than sending in a regular Joe Schmo cop. So that's great. We're going to see that for a little bit here in the early issues. And so, like I said, they're looking to stop a bank robbery. I don't know why I froze there. Commander Thomas is going to wind up being the gentleman's name, the liaison's name. So that's going to be, again, who Captain Britain refers to, or at least attempts to refer to as his point of contact in the police department to work smoothly together. But during this time, this is where we see a war wolf come and take over this person's body. Now, I had to look up a little bit what it is they do, right, with, like, what happens to the person. Do they just get flayed and then the werewolf takes the skin? What happens is they will do something to the body to where they can just put it on, they can put the skin on them and portray themselves as that person. And what winds up happening is the person winds up getting rewritten to basically where the werewolf is in possession, primarily. The person kind of knows what's going on, and depending on the amount of time that the werewolf is in control, the longer it is, the less likely it is you're going to be able to escape and eventually die. And I'll bring up something next issue about this, because obviously I read a few issues to kind of get myself in the groove of this here to start off with, but that's pretty wild, where a werewolf would just enter your mouth and kind of just pull like he's wearing a hoodie. But during the bank robbery, as the werewolf is doing this to the cop, they seem to try to get the bank robbery under wraps here to finish it, to kind of end this quietly and not have anyone hurt. Rachel feels a psychic backlash, and it winds up being, and that's Kitty in her intangible form, posing as a ghost. But it seems like Rachel can feel a psychic scream, so to speak, a psychic backlash, if she's in the vicinity of a werewolf basically taking over a human body. I also forgot to mention that during this point, Kitty Pryde, she's trying to control her powers more to be able to stay solid longer and have more control over her intangibility, which is basically she can just phase through solid objects. Alright, so that's something she's also trying to deal with at the moment. But as Kitty took control and Rachel eventually took control of the scenario, there was a gunshot that went off, and the police and Captain Britain, of course, get all upset and think that something happened. But nothing happened, and Rachel's just explaining that there was some sort of situation that had her, she's not really going to want to say that she's that distracted like that, but she's going to be concerned about why that happened. This guy is going to be kind of a hindrance a little bit for a couple of issues, for a little bit anyway. He seems to have a real thing for Rachel here, I tell you. But she explains to them like there was a psychic scream. She can't find where that came from anymore, so there's a concern there. We do have. Alright. We do have a second werewolf take control of a human. Rachel again feels that, presence, so to speak, and can't explain why that seems to be going on for her. We also get Kitty here, grieving and mourning her friend Doug, the X-Men, thinking of all the adventures they went on. And of course she's going to question if this is the right thing for her to do, if this is going to work out and be a well-adjusted team, cohesive team. I'm not going to say the X-Men were a well-adjusted team, but at least they were cohesive enough that whatever may come their way, anything from the Juggernaut, Orcus, or whatever Sentinels, they can say one thing and know what the plan is, right? But Captain Britain comes down and checks on her and kind of, lets her know that if she ever needs help tinkering around, he knows his way around, that type of stuff. So he's trying to be there for Kitty, knowing that, she's probably feeling like an outsider at this point. Different country, different team. All you really know is Rachel and Kurt. He's still trying to get adjusted to everything. But, it seems like Kurt's moving on a little bit. Him and Megan seem to like each other, or at least some sort of flirtatious thing between them. And while they're at the lighthouse, that's going to wind up being their new base of operations that Brian Broderick owns, Captain Britain, Kurt happens to walk into a room where how's this even possible to be in a lighthouse? Like, there's a whole different thing. And then when he leaves, there's nothing there. So the lighthouse seems to kind of just spawn random rooms and stuff like that. But that'll be another little mystery that we wind up going on, okay? Here we pick up with Rachel and Brian, Captain Britain. Brian does have money, and he's like a businessman, and they're at his ex-girlfriend's business. I think they're getting ready to set up some business stuff, bank accounts and all this stuff. And the guy that was at the bank robbery happened to be there, and he's trying to bother Rachel as she's talking to Kurt. and Megan psychically. That's what, if you ever like start reading this or when you see this, that's kind of what they're meaning. That Rachel's talking to them psychically. It's just for the reader to understand. To the outside person, it's going to look like she's talking to nobody. But this is just for us to, be aware that she's talking to somebody. And he keeps bothering her so much so that he gets knocked on his ass by just her turning into the Phoenix. This guy has a thing for redheads, and he just can't take no for an option there. You know what I mean? Brian and Courtney, that's her name, the ex-girlfriend's name. Reconnect, touch base a little bit. She's trying to get a gist why he's there and just what he's been up to. So that's just kind of there. That's going to be a semi-lingering storyline there. Kitty happens to get an idea that if she dresses up like Rachel, that the werewolves will track her down because they're looking for Rachel. Now, why they're looking for Rachel is that she's a outsider of time. She's really not supposed to be even in the time period she's in now at this present moment, but she is. And they want to have that. They want to have her and her powers for themselves, or well, at least for the guy looking to have her power. The other werewolves are just kind of whatever, but there's one that's just really about, I want Rachel's body. I know how that sounded just now. So she goes out, but Kitty goes out dressed up and looking like Rachel. Weird. Kitty's weird, bro. That's a weird move, Kitty. You're not even gonna. Here's another little flirtatious thing between Kurt and Megan, where Kurt's trying to take a bath and she comes in with some tea, and he's like, "Bro, you gotta knock. Come on, you gotta knock." When Kurt realizes when he's looking for Kitty that she's enacted this plan, he calls out for Rachel to go find Kitty so she doesn't get herself into trouble, and that they'll try to, because Kitty built a tracker to find these werewolves. And so when Rachel finally gets a hold of Kitty to say, like, first of all, you're being weird, calling out dressed like me, but you need to go home. But it's too late now, because the werewolves are coming, and then you're going to knock Rachel, not Rachel, the Kitty out and take her as prisoner. But they're not realizing that it's Kitty. They're only realizing that, like I said, they want Kitty, but, they can't get her. Rachel does try to make her way here to fight them off, but that's not going to wind up happening because, of course, the cavalry shows up a little bit too late. They go to the last spot where, look, see, so they carry even the skins with them. It's crazy. This is crazy work. This is diabolical. This is like body horror type of stuff. And where Rachel was at last, they all meet up, and they just barely miss saving Rachel. Kitty. They just miss Kitty and the werewolves, so now they have to figure out where Kitty was taken by the werewolves, and that's where this issue ends. On a side note, I forgot that they do also I know at some point they stopped doing the back covers for this title. I'm just not sure which issue it is. But that is the first issue of the ongoing series of Excalibur. And it set up a lot of different questions and mysteries and stories about what we can possibly see. Megan and Brian's romance, is that going to last or not last? Is Kitty, Kurt, and Rachel going to be able to adjust being heroes in England and being on a different team and stuff? How's Rachel dealing with being an outsider of time in this book? A bunch of different questions are going to be answered over time as new ones are risen. I want you to let me know what you think about this Excalibur issue. Do you think that the X-Men books were better back then, back in the 80s and 90s, or do you think that the X-Men books are better now? Let me know down below, guys. Don't forget how awesome and amazing all of you are. And until next time, peace, Snookums.